My name is Fardeen Khimani, and I will be the moderator for this debate. Today we will be discussing the Clean Air and Water Acts. The Clean Air and Water Acts consist of the Clean Air Act, CAA, and the Clean Water Act, CWA. The CAA is a comprehensive federal law that regulates air emissions from stationary and mobile sources. The CWA regulates the pollutant discharges into the waters of the United States. It gives the EPA the authority to implement pollution control programs such as setting wastewater standards for industry. Funding the construction of sewage treatment plants under the Construction Grants Program. The CAA was passed in 1970 and the CWA was passed in 1972. These acts are passed as a result of raised public awareness of protecting the environment. They were also passed to keep the air and water of the United States clean and to regulate industrial pollution of the air and water. The CAWA requires citizens to not pollute the air and water to stay safe from legal consequences. It also requires companies to limit pollution of the air and water. The responsibility of controlling air and water pollution of the nation fall under the responsibilities of the EPA, but controlling air and water pollution of a single state falls under the responsibility of a state environmental agency such as the Environmental Protection Division of Georgia, EPD. This creates a conflict, so the EPA sets standards for allowed emissions and individual states have the responsibility to make programs to enforce these standards. This is cooperative federalism. The Clean Air and Water Acts are funded by categorical grants. The Clean Air Act replaced the Air Pollution Control Act of 1955 due to a cloud that was over a town in Pennsylvania that killed 20 people and made 6,000 people sick. The CWA replaced the Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 1948. The Clean Water Act administration and enforcement. Waste management. The EPA regulates discharges of the pollutants from municipal and industrial wastewater treatment plants, sewer collection systems, and stormwater discharges from industrial facilities and municipalities. Animal waste and illegally discharged pollutants to the water. Spills, oil, and hazardous substances. Clean Air Act, administration and enforcement. The EPA works with the federal, state, and tribal regulatory partners through a comprehensive Clean Air Act compliance monitoring program. Compliance monitoring ensures that the regulated community obeys environmental laws, regulations through on-site inspections and record reviews that can lead to enforcement when necessary. The CAA Compliance Assistance Program provides businesses, federal facilities, local government, and tribes with tools to help meet environmental regulatory requirements. The states must comply with the EPA standards or it will face cutbacks in other areas of funding. To Halle Blakew with defending the federal government.
Federal government was correct to enact the Clean Air and Water Acts because the power to regulate commerce is a delegated power to Congress in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It states that Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. The chemicals and materials used by large industries and companies can be regulated by Congress through the provisions of the Commerce Clause. The regulation of such harmful chemicals has significantly reduced the release of air and water pollutants, which have been proven to cause ozone depletion, damaged ecosystems, respiratory and heart problems, disruption of food chains, and waterborne diseases. The passing of these mandates has significantly improved the safety and condition of our water and atmosphere, and it has overall resulted in the betterment of our country and its inhabitants.
The federal government does not have the power to pass an extremely restrictive mandate in an attempt to solve environmental issues that could be solved in other ways. The Clean Air and Water Act was not an appropriate way to solve the environmental problems because the federal government does not respect the reserved powers enough. And if we let the federal government continue to put these mandates on the states, they will only get worse and more restricting. In the 10th Amendment, it states that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states, respectfully or to the people. The 10th Amendment was included in the Bill of Rights to further define the balance of power between federal government and states, so ignoring it and putting these mandates would be unconstitutional.
We are not going to Shardae John with the federal government.
The federal government has the right to enact the Clean Air and Water Act and mandate the control and prevention of water and air pollution because mobile sources like trucks, cars, and planes, as well as stationary sources like factories, industries, and power plants, were emitting harmful chemicals. Due to this, the EPA regulated the composition of fuel, phasing out the lead and gasoline, which is a hazard to the nervous and respiratory system. This is only one of the many harmful effects that can be prevented by the enactment of the Clean Air and Water Act. If we don't start taking extra measures to improve these dangerous environmental conditions, then our country's future will have nothing but failure and sickness ahead of it. The passing of these amendments will allow further generations to follow our mandate and continue the progress to develop our country and even more. This mandate is essential to the advancement of our country as a whole.
Don't flip-flop through the camera too. Just look directly at that. Never look at the camera because it looks like you're reading something. Madeline, you're going to have to cut this, okay? We're now going to switch to Jiore Lewis defending the state governments.
We, the state government, argue that the federal government cannot force upon individual states the Clean Air and Water Acts because every individual state has the different requirements. For the Commerce Clause in the mandate will greatly affect the business in every state. The CALR requirements will make it harder for business to thrive, and when business develop, that the results in a better overall economy for the country. When you take into an account, state governments can also resolve some of the environmental issues. The cons of having a slow economy outweigh the pros of the Clean Air and Water Act.
Go.
Why can't states utilize their reserve power and make their own reserve regulations to stop air and water pollution?
If states were to utilize their reserve power in this scenario, industries in some states would prosper more as opposed to states that have stricter regulations for the environment. This will cause plenty of entrepreneurs to start businesses in those states with more lenient restrictions. This causes a large unbalance in the growth of economy in different states because some states will have way more businesses than the others. Because of these instances, having federal government pass an act that all states must follow is at the best interest of the country.
What is the future of our country going to look like if we continue to do nothing about these issues?
Our country can improve federal government without federal government stepping in. Individual states can resolve our own problems while we solve more specific environmental issues that cater to every state. With hard work and effort, our country's future could look exactly the same with or without the federal mandate. Just because federal government doesn't force states to comply with the EPA standards doesn't mean we won't solve the problems ourselves. How are businesses going to thrive with these strict regulations?
Our businesses are going to thrive with these strict regulations on our companies because it ensures competition between other businesses and ensures public health and safety.
Here you go.
Is the success of our industries more important than the well-being of the people and our ecosystems?
The success of our industries are not more important than the well-being of the people. However, the results from a steady and prosperous economy benefit the people and our country more than you would expect. Economic growth results in a higher average of incomes, lower unemployment rates, and lower government borrowing, improved public services, and increased research and development. All of these will benefit people substantially, with the side effect and slightly worse environmental conditions which could be reduced by state government.